So in this lesson, we're going to discuss about computer components and also about hardware and software. So what is hardware? What is software? And we will also be discussing some of the examples of hardware and software. So let's get started with today's lesson. Okay, so first of all, let's start with the hardware. So what is hardware? So basically, hardware refers to any physical device that you can touch that is part of a computer system. Okay, so anything that has a physical presence and it is part of the computer system is called as hardware. Now, it includes input devices, output devices, and also the processing devices. Okay, so for example, if you take a look at your mobile phone, then the screen, the keyboard, the camera, the microphone, the battery, the charging port, the speakers are all physical devices. Right, so they are physical parts of your mobile phone, and therefore they are all hardware. Now, let's move on to the software now. So what is software? So unlike hardware, software is intangible. Okay, so it does not have any physical presence. So software is a collection of programs and other operating information that works with the hardware to make the computer work. Okay, so the software is basically a set of instructions that tells the hardware how to perform various tasks. For example, the operating system, the applications that you use like Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, the games that you play, the different utilities that you use to maintain and fix the issues on your computer, these are all software. Okay, so software is basically intangible. You cannot touch it, but it helps the hardware to function properly. Alright, so now let's take a look at some of the examples of hardware components. So let's take the example of a simple desktop computer system. Alright, so this is just a very simple example. So over here you can see that we have got the monitor. We have got the keyboard, the mouse, the CPU, which is the central processing unit, the RAM, which is the random access memory, the motherboard, the hard disk drive, and the power supply. So let's quickly discuss these one by one. Alright, so first of all, let's start with the monitor. So this is an output device because it displays the information for the user. Okay, so whatever information it displays it is from the software. But it is an output device because it is showing the information to the user. Now next is the keyboard and the mouse. These are the input devices. Okay, so you as a user, you will be using these to enter the information into the computer system. Now moving on to the internal components, we have got the CPU. This is the central processing unit. This is basically the brain of the computer system. Okay, so all the processing, all the heavy calculations, everything is done by the CPU. Next is the RAM. Now RAM stands for random access memory. This is basically a temporary storage space for the computer system. Okay, so whatever data or the information that is being currently used by the computer system is stored in the RAM. Now next is the motherboard. So basically the motherboard is like a large circuit board. Okay, so the motherboard basically holds and it connects all the different hardware components together. And then we have got the hard disk drive, and this is used for long-term storage of data. Okay, so whatever files you save on your computer system, they are saved on the hard disk drive. And then we have got the power supply. The power supply provides power to all the different hardware components. So these were some of the examples of hardware components. Now let's take an example of a simple mobile phone. So this is a mobile phone, right? So in this case, the screen is both the input as well as output device. Okay, so you can see the information on the screen, right? So that's the output. But you can also interact with the screen by touching it, right? So that makes it an input device as well. Then we have got the camera. So this is again an input device because this takes the input from the surroundings and converts it into data. Then we have got the microphone, which is again an input device. It converts the sound into data. Then we have got the battery, which is the processing device. Okay, so this provides the power to the entire mobile phone. Then we have got the processor. This is the central processing unit of the mobile phone, and all the heavy lifting is done by the processor. Then we have got the charging port. Now this is actually used to charge the battery. Then we have got the speakers, which is an output device because it basically plays the sound. And finally, we have got the keypad or the buttons. Now these are input devices because you as a user, you will be using them to enter the information. Now there are some common hardware components that you will find in both a computer system as well as in a mobile phone. Okay, so two such components are the input and output devices. So for example, the screen, the keyboard, the mouse, the speakers, the camera, the microphone, these are the devices that you will find in both a computer system as well as in a mobile phone. Now, second common component is the processor. Now, the processor is the central processing unit. It is the brain of the entire system, whether it is a computer system or a mobile phone. Okay, so this is also a common component. Alright, so now let's take a look at the different types of hardware. So the first type is the input hardware. Now, input hardware refers to those devices that are used to enter the data into the computer system. Okay, so for example, the keyboard, the mouse, the microphone, the camera, these are the input devices. Then we have got the output hardware. So output hardware refers to those devices that display or presents the information to the user. Okay, so for example, the monitor, the speakers, the printer, the camera, these are some of the examples of output devices. And the third type is the processing hardware. Now, this processing hardware includes the central processing unit, which is the CPU, and also the other electronic components that actually do the processing. Alright, so these were some of the examples of hardware components. Now, let's move on to software. So I've already told you that software is basically the set of instructions that controls the hardware. Now, these instructions are provided to the software in the form of programs. Okay, so these programs are basically written in a special language which is called as the machine language. Now, the machine language consists of a combination of O-South and OneSouth, but these days there are more advanced programming languages available like C++, Java, Python, JavaScript, etc., and these are much easier to learn. Now, these programming languages are translated into machine language before they are executed on the hardware. Now, broadly, software can be divided into two categories. So the first category is the system software. So this system software manages and controls the hardware. Okay, so this basically interacts with the hardware directly and it ensures that the hardware is functioning properly. Now, the system software includes the firmware and the operating system. So the firmware is basically a type of software that is permanently stored on a hardware device. So, for example, the BIOS. This is the basic input-output system. This is a firmware that is stored on a small chip on the motherboard. Now, the operating system is also a type of system software, but this is stored on a disk and it can be loaded into the RAM when needed. Now, the most popular examples of operating systems are Windows, Linux, Mac OS, Android, iOS. So these are some of the examples of operating systems. Now, the second category is the application software. Now, this application software is designed to help the user to perform specific tasks. So, for example, the word processor like Microsoft Word, the web browser like Google Chrome, the different games that you play, the photo editing software like Photoshop, the different mobile phone applications, these are all examples of application software. Now, the most important thing to remember is that the hardware cannot work without the software. Okay, so for example, if you have a mobile phone, right, and if you do not have the operating system installed, or if you do not have any applications installed, then your mobile phone is basically useless. Similarly, if you have a computer system, right, and if you do and have the operating system installed, and also if you do and have any applications installed, then your computer system is basically of no use. Alright guys, so this was all about computer components and also about hardware and software. I hope you have enjoyed this lesson. If you have any doubts, please write to me in the comments section and I'll try my best to solve your doubts. Thank you very much for watching and I'll see you in the next lesson.